Vittal Dev says, I have logged in my wife. Jayanti Dukhrada, please watching.
Jayanti?
And Krishna.
Okay. Jayanti is, Krishna is Vittal Dev, logged in, very nice. Yeah. Exactly 2 minutes. The moment you give me a signal, I'll start. Vakratunda Mahachara.
And give a context and then start.
Yeah.
Because new people have
Yeah. Namaste. Good evening, all. Today is Ramanavami, and on the occasion of Ramanavami, I'll be sharing a few stories from Ramayana. The stories from the life of Sri Rama, and we'll see how we can relate to those stories and how we can apply the lessons learned from these stories to our personal life. We'll start with a small prayer. It will be a Ganesh Vandana. People who know can chant with me. Vakratunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. The lifestyle which we are recommended to lead is called a Vedic lifestyle. It comes from the Vedic heritage, and it is also referred to as Sanatana Dharma. It is not a religion or a school of thought, it is a lifestyle. It's a way of life. It's called Sanatana Dharma. So I'll be referring to Sanatana Dharma and Vedic heritage very often during the course of the next 30 minutes. There are 4 yugas. The first yuga is called Satya Yuga. The second yuga is called Treta Yuga. The third yuga is called Dwapara Yuga. And we are now in Kali Yuga. Ramayana happened in the Treta Yuga. Rama was born in the kingdom of Koshala, which was ruled by a king, Dasharatha. Dasharatha had 3 wives, Kausalya, Kaikeyi and Sumitra. Ram was born to Kaushalya. Lakshman and Shatrughna were born to Sumitra, and Bharata was born to Kaikeyi. The story actually starts when Rama is nearing the age of 20. He is an accomplished warrior, and the sages come to the court of Dasharatha and request the services of Rama and Lakshmana so that they can peacefully conduct their yaga. So we start the lesson with the role of a king in establishing dharma in the society. So the Raja is expected to provide means and support for dharmic activities in the society. In keeping with this dharma, whenever any foreign faith came into the country, our Rajas gladly gave them the space and the facilities to conduct their dharmic activities as per the dharma laid down of a Raja. Now let's go into the life of Sri Rama. Sri Rama grows up to be a young prince. He is going to be crowned king the next day. And the previous day, his mother, stepmother, Kaikeyi, calls him and tells him, "O Rama, your father had asked me to give you this message. Your father says you and your wife will go into exile immediately, and your younger brother Bharata will be crowned the king." What is Ram's response to this command from his stepmother? Ram tells his stepmother, "O Mata, you don't have to say father's name for this. You can say it is very much your command. I am willing to obey your command as it is, without any question, unconditionally." Ram not only obeyed, he physically prepared himself to move on an exile. His newly married wife Sita said, "I am going to follow suit. I will live with Rama." Lakshman said, "I have never ever lived away from Sri Rama. I will live with Rama throughout this exile. And throughout this exile, I also take another vow that I will not sleep during this entire period of exile of 14 years. I will not sleep at all." Now, what do we learn from this episode of the Ramayana? One, unconditional obedience to parents. In Treta Yuga, the value given was unconditional obedience to the parents. If the father just thought of it, people had to carry it out. From this comes the Tamil quote, "Tandai solmikka mandiramillai." The words of the father are the best mantra that we can get in our lives. He proceeds. And when it is decided then that he will proceed on an exile, his wife Sita unconditionally follows suit. She says, "I have made a commitment to be his life partner. I will follow suit. I give up the pleasures and the comforts of the palace. I will live with my husband and follow the lifestyle he follows." The lesson learned here is a committed married life follows sacrifices for each other, mutual sacrifices, and sacrifices for the society, sacrifices for a common cause. What is the dharma of a brother? The brother, the younger brother, a warrior, devoted to his older brother, decided to sacrifice his personal life in the welfare of his older brother. The older brother is going on an exile, and Lakshman says, "I will follow him. I will keep awake for 14 years. Great amount of personal sacrifice." In the story, the role of Lakshman's wife is not highlighted very often. Lakshman's wife Urmila, she says, "I will not follow my husband, because if I follow my husband will perhaps may not find it easy to upkeep his dharma of protecting his brother. So I will stay in the palace. Not in the palace, I will stay in the outskirts of the palace and enjoy the same comforts that my husband is enjoying in the forest. And I also take a vow that I shall also not sleep for the next 14 years. Much later, when Bharata comes to know that his brother is on exile and he is asked to assume the throne, Bharata goes in search of Rama and says, "Come back." Ram says, "No, it's a commitment. I have made a commitment that I'll be away. It is not a commitment it's an obedience, unconditional obedience of the father's words. So I shall fulfill the father's words. It is my dharma to keep up my father's words. So I shall be on an exile for 14 years. You can rule in my place." Bharata says, "Yes, I shall rule, but it shall be Rama Rajya. It will not be Bharata Rajya." So he asks for his paduka. He says, "Give me your sandals. I will put it on the throne and I shall rule as your representative. I shall not live in the palace. I shall live in the outskirts of the city. I shall live in a hut. I shall live the same frugal life that you are living." And Shatrughna decides to support him. From these episodes, the lesson we learn is when a commitment comes from the Raja for the sake of the Praja, when they uphold values, when they hold commitment to the word, come what may, the ultimate beneficiaries are the praja. So Dasharatha gave a word, Rama upheld that word, his wife and younger brother supported Rama in keeping up the word. So we have dharma, unconditional upholding of dharma, whatever be the situation. So students of Bharatanatyam, if I ask you, how will you pose as Rama? You will have a straight pose with the arrow held like this, the bow held like this. It shows dharma is straight. You have to uphold dharma. If you have to uphold dharma, you have to learn to stand straight and you have to learn to make sacrifices, whatever be the condition. Now, we are moving through the story of Ramayana a little more. We come to the situation where Sugriva comes and seeks Rama's help. He says, I have been vanquished by my brother. My brother has abducted my wife. He has usurped my kingdom and I am in exile. So will you help me regain my kingdom? Rama gives him a word, yes, I shall. So this is a lesson where we understand that when we work for people with similar problems, Ram's kingdom is not with him, he is in exile from his kingdom. At the point of time when he meets Sugriva, his wife is abducted, Sugriva's wife was abducted. So when you have alliance with people with similar problems, then the alliance becomes stronger. In the battle with Vali, when Ram kills Vali, before his death, Vali says, if you were looking only for Sita, all you had to do was to tell me. Ravan would have not dared to disobey me. I would have got you Sita back like that. Well, then it would have not been Ramayana. Here, Ram is not only seeking for his lost wife, he is also seeking to uphold dharma. He gave a word to Sugriva that I shall support you in regaining your kingdom, and in exchange you will support me in looking for my wife. It's a commitment to a friend who has problems. We go further. We come across a character called Hanuman. Hanuman is a warrior in the kingdom of Sugriva. He is Ram Bhakta. Till he meets Ram, he has only heard of Ram, he has never seen Ram. And when he sees Ram, he knows this was the person he has been looking for all his life. So very often when a guru comes into our life, when an inspirational person comes into our life, it will be a flash and it will be a hunch. Very often the inspiration happens in a hunch, like it happened to Hanuman. And whenever you see Hanuman's picture along with Rama, if Rama is standing, Hanuman will be his head will be bowed. And if Rama is seated, Hanuman will be seated even lower, again with the head bowed. So to an inspiration, he is constantly in awe and with his heads bowed to the inspiration. So Sundarakanda is a very beautiful section of the Ramayana where Hanuman discovers himself. He discovers his potential, the potential which he has been missing so far. He discovers the potential, and he discovers the potential not for a personal cause. He discovers the potential for a bigger cause, the cause of his master. We go to the section where Ram has crossed over to Ayodhya and there is an imminent war between Ravana's forces and Ram's army of Vanaras. To refer to Rama's army as an army of monkeys is not correct. They are Vanara. Vanara means they are not complete human beings. They are beings, but they are not monkeys as such. Maybe they had a face like a monkey, they had tails, but to refer them as monkeys would not be right. We will always refer to them as Vanaras. They go across, and even before going across, they build a bridge. Ram did not call upon Hanuman to build a bridge. he called upon two Vanaras, Nala and Neela, to build the bridge. Nala and Neela had certain gifts. They were talented, gifted Vanaras. They had a gift that if they threw rocks into the sea, the rock would not sink but it would float. We learn a lesson. So when you are working in a team, it's not always necessary to go after the best members in your team. You have to choose the team members according to the talent. So Nala and Neela were employed to throw the stones, the rocks onto the sea so that the bridge could be built. There was a small squirrel which wanted to help, and the squirrel carried a little amount of clay in its mouth to help cement the bridge. And they say Ram patted the squirrel on its back. The three stripes that you see on a squirrel's back are the finger marks of Ram. That's what they say. Again, a lesson in teamwork. The smallest of contribution is recognized by the leader. And recognition to a small person inspires the other bigger performers to do better. It's very good lessons in leadership that we can learn from this episode of Ramayana. We go across, and when Ram reaches there, we have sets of brothers here, Ram, Lakshman, Bharata and Shatrughna. We also have brothers that side, Ravana, Vibhishana and Kumbhakarna. When the war is imminent, Vibhishana says, I am not going to fight for you. He is called a traitor. He is called a person who let down his brother. But he is very clear. I have found Ram to be not an ordinary soul. He is an avatara Purusha. So I have decided to commit myself to Sri Rama. So a lot of people say, is Vibhishana a traitor? I would say the human pursuits are put under four categories: Artha, Kama, Dharma and Moksha. We are not talking about Moksha here now. Here is Vibhishana, a character who put Dharma higher than even Artha and Kama. And among the Dharma, his commitment to Ishvara, his commitment to the Lord was much higher than his commitment to the immediate family. He was willing to forego commitment to his brother compared to the commitment to his master. He went and surrendered to Sri Rama and became Rama's ally in the war against Ravan. There was another brother, Kumbhakarna. Kumbhakarna was woken up from a deep slumber, and Kumbhakarna asked Ravan, why is it that you wake me up? What is the emergency? Because if you had let me sleep for a few more months, I would have become invincible. What was the urgency? When Ravan explains the urgency to Kumbhakarna, Kumbhakarna says, you abducted another man's wife and you want me to fight for you? Well, your command. Here is a brother who says unconditional commitment to a brother even if he is wrong. He says, I'll fight for you, but I know for sure that in this fight I shall be the loser. And there are stories, some people say, that Kumbhakarna said, I know I am going to die. If I refuse to fight, you will execute me as a traitor. And if I fight, I will die in the hands of Rama. I would prefer to die in the hands of Rama rather than die in your hands. So he goes and fights and he perishes. Before we go further into this war, let's look at Ravana as a character. Ravana, he is an exponent of Samaveda. He is an exponent of music. He is the king of Lanka, the Swarnapuri. His wife Mandodari is one of the most beautiful women on earth. She was so beautiful that Hanuman mistook her for Sita. So such a beautiful person. He lived among wealth, and he had impressed Shiva and Parvati with his scholarship, with his commitment and with his devotion. 10 heads stands for the kind of scholarship that he had. We could even take it as 10 world-class degrees that he possibly had. That was his scholarship. But all this scholarship came to naught when he decided to abduct another man's wife. If he had fought Rama in a war and taken Sita as a slave, that would still be war dharma. But he went in the role of a sannyasi, knowing fully well that a sannyasi would be trusted. Even today, a sannyasi robe has a lot of value in India. When you see a person with a sannyasi robe, we salute that person. The sannyasi is respected even today in India. And Ravan took on the robe of a sannyasi and abducted Sita and tricked her and made her come out of the firewall, and he tricked her. It shows that a person of great scholarship, if his agenda is very clear, if his agenda is dharmic, he can approach the best of his contacts. If his agenda were dharmic, if Ram had entered his kingdom for a dharma, Ravana could have gone to Shiva for help, but he could not even contact Shiva for help because his basic activity was adharma. So if your goal was adharma, you would never be ever able to invoke or contact your best friends. You would always lose out on the best friends, and you will end up having friends who don't really care for you, would possibly people who are time servers. So Ravana couldn't count on anybody. However, his brother stood by him. His son Indrajit stood by him. When Indrajit was commanded, the story says that Indrajit asked him, "Father, why do you ask me to fight Rama? Rama is a Purushottama." You know, the name Purushottama applies only to Rama, not to anybody else. He asks Ravana, "You want me to fight Purushottama, what for?" Ravana says, "Rama is an invader." He says, "Invader for what? Has he come for your property?" No. He has come to retrieve or take his wife back. Do you think abducting his wife was a dharmic activity? And you want me to fight your battle? You abduct some man's wife, another man's wife, and you want me to go fight for you? And he asks, are you playing the role of a father properly? Ravana had no answer. Even Mandodara asked him, he said, "Are you an inspirational father?" Ram had no answer, Ravana had no answer. He only had to yell at her to keep quiet, nothing else. Indrajit perished. Ravana went for the battle himself. Before he goes for the battle, a lot of people in a lot of stories have shown Sita as a very vulnerable woman. We have to understand that Sita was not a vulnerable woman, she was a very, very strong woman. She was abducted, she was imprisoned in the Ashok Vana. Hanuman reached there and said, "Sita, I would like to take you back." Sita says, "No. Unless Rama comes and retrieves me, it will not be the glory of Rama. Rama should come and I will wait for him." She says, "What if any harm befalls me?" Sita says, "As long as Rama is in my heart, no harm will befall me." It's a lesson for all of us. They say the word Rama itself is a sarva nivaranam. Even the disease which cannot be cured by medicine can be cured by just the Rama Nama. So you just have to say Shri Ram, and it is when it is said even at the end of your lifetime. It is only for Kali Yuga. Even if you say the Ram's name at the end of your lifetime, you are guaranteed moksha. That's what they say. So Sita says that with the name Rama in my heart, nobody will be able to harm me. And very often in the story it says every day Ravan used to come and sing and dance in front of Sita. He used to show her his glory, his weapons, his 10 heads. She held him at bay with just a blade of grass. She used to tell him, "You cross the limit, I will burn you with this blade of grass." We don't know whether Sita had the power or not. They say the Pativrata has the power to burn a person who transgresses dharma. Similarly, when Ravana, in spite of all his glories, knew fully well that if he transgressed dharma and he tried to possess Sita forcefully, he would come to an end. So that was the power of a blade of grass in Sita's hands. So Ravana is a character which stands for, in today's competitive world, we can see the Ravanas who want to just about own anything they want by hook or by crook. You have it, I want it, I will take it. The story is this, that actually Lanka was not his, it was his brother's. He occupied it. Mandodari was the daughter of a king. He just went and brought her. He saw Sita, he wanted her. So he is known to occupy and grab things. So Ravana stands for the prototype of a grabber. In the world of adharma, then dharma and adharma are very clear. Ram stands for dharma and Ravan stands for adharma, and it's a clear black and white case. There is even a beautiful side story. They say when Ravan impressed Shiva, Shiva asked him, what is it that you want? Shiva is also known as Ashutoshi. Ashutoshi means one who is impressed by very small things. That's why on Shivaratri day you pour water on his head and give a leaf and he is very happy. So he is known as Ashutoshi, and he said, tell me what you want. And Ravana says, give me Parvati. So Ravana's intentions are not okay even right from day one. And Shiva smiled and told Parvati, go with him. It's a very beautiful story. It's very known only in some parts of India. Parvati tells Ravan, go ahead, don't turn around. He says, how do you know you're following me? He says, you will hear my anklets. Just follow the tinkling sound of my anklets and you will know I am following you. So they were walking through Bengal, the sands of the river, the anklets were muffled. And Ravan thought Parvati is not with him, so he turned round and he saw that terrifying Kali there, and he ran from Bengal and landed only in Lanka next. And they say Kali took root at Calcutta, Kali Ghat, that was the original name of Calcutta, and she is worshipped there as a very powerful deity, terrifying in form but very kind at heart. It's a very beautiful side story. We look at a couple of approaches of Ram in the war against Ravan. Ram's army formation was arrowhead formation. He leads from the front and his army follows him. A simple leadership lesson: if it is your battle, please lead from the front. Never send. Ravan lost because it was his battle. He sent his warriors first. Whereas Ram fought his battle standing up in the front. And on an occasion when Ravan lost on day one, Ram tells him, look, if you return Sita to me, I will spare you and go back. I will let you go. This story is not available in the regular Ramayan. Some side stories say that Jambavan went and asked Ram, you have already crowned Vibhishan as the king of Lanka. Now what if Ram surrenders? What if Ravan surrenders? What will you give him? Ram says, for Ravan's scholarship, if he had the right values, he is fit to be king of Ayodhya. I will give him Ayodhya as kingdom. But he says, don't worry, Ravan, these characters can't change. So the story goes that he perished. Each of his heads were toppled and he died. And how does Ram treat a vanquished enemy? He tells Lakshman, look, I vanquished him, but his scholarship is intact. Please go learn Rajya Dharma from him. Because his people in Lanka were happy with him. He was not a tyrant. So please learn from him. They say Lakshman stood at near the head of Ravan and wanted to know. Ravan looked away. Ram said, this is not the way to learn. Go squat by his feet. Let him look at you. So even when you can learn from a vanquished enemy, if you follow a certain dharma, you can even learn from a vanquished enemy. You can learn from warfare. Ravan was asked to teach Lakshman. And the dialogue says that Lakshman says, I don't know what happened to me. As Ravan says, I don't know what happened to me. Why did I choose to fight Ram? I still am not able to figure out. They say Ravan was a Mayavi. To entice Sita, he could dress as a sannyasi. During the days of it, Ashok I, he used to come dressed as in different robes. One of the stories say that somebody suggested, why don't you dress like Rama? Why don't you put on the Vesha of Rama and go and try to entice Sita? He says, the moment I put on Rama's robes, I can think only of Mandodari and not of Sita. For the simple reason, Rama was a Purushottama. He had one and only one wife. So he says, the moment you think of Rama, you can't think of any other person. So he said, putting on Rama's robes made me a better man. Therefore, I don't want to be Rama. I wanted to be Ravana all along. These are the beautiful episodes coming out of the war. Now, after the war, Sita was asked to go through Agni Pariksha. A lot of women folk are very angry with that. Okay. Now, suppose you are returning from abroad, okay, and you land at the airport. You will be screened and, if necessary, quarantined. Okay. So it was not wrong. You come in from a foreign land. Who knows what kind of viruses you bring into India? They screened her. There was no problem really. Really, there was no problem. The section Uttara Ramayan has been added on to original Ramayana. That brought in a lot of confusion, because there they say some washerman was talking about Sita and Ram sent her away, was banished her again. Now that was not the part of original Ramayana. The original Ramayana starts with Rama as a young warrior and it ends with Pattabhishekam. That is the original Ramayana. The Uttara Ramayana and the Bala Ramayana have been added on. We don't know the origins and we give it the same kind of respect. But because of Uttara Ramayana, there is a lot of confusion. I would say that a lot of people who ask me, is Ram, it's common knowledge, people say, is Ram a mythical character? Is Ramayana a fiction? The Vedic heritage describes Ramayana as itihasa. Itihasa means history. History means it so happened. It happened. So there was a king, he was on exile, and he went and his wife was abducted. Around the central character is Rama, and we don't gain much by asking whether it happened or not. But if we learn the lesson of what we can learn from this lesson, we can learn dharma. And if dharma is what you want to do, unconditional dharma, you have to do a lot of sacrifices in your life. And it is itihasa, and Rama is a character. Strictly speaking, I am not bothered whether Rama is. For me, Rama is a hero. For us, we are not Hindus, we are Vaidikas. We come from the Vedic heritage, we are Vaidikas. For us, Rama is a hero. Rama stands for sacrifice, Rama stands for dharma, Rama stands for inspiration. He is a Purushottama. If his word is given, it is given. And there is a small story which says Sita was once asked, how can Rama banish you? He says, how can Rama? Rama never banishes Sita. For the purpose of Rajya, I am living away. And remember, I am living in Ram Rajya, where every being is safe. So nobody is banished in Ram Rajya. So Ram Rajya is the glorious Rajya of Treta Yuga. Can Ram Rajya happen again? I am not sure. But yes, Ram Rajya can be a goal. It can be like the pole star. It can be like the Dhruva Nakshatra, which can possibly never reach, but it can always show us the way. So this is the episode few episodes that I wanted to share with you of Ramayana. Ramayana should be heard often. We start today. It is not that we hear it only today. We start hearing of Rama stories. It should be heard from the elders. It should be told to the youngsters, and we should learn to live our life like Rama, a king unconditionally committed to dharma, willing to sacrifice for his people, willing to sacrifice for the elders, willing to sacrifice for the society. That is Rama. glorious character. That's what we try to learn. We end this with a small Hanuman Namaskar. If you know this, please sing with me. Okay. It's quite simple. Veera Maruti Gambhira Maruti, Veera Maruti Gambhira Maruti, Dhira Maruti Ati Dhira Maruti, Dhira Maruti Ati Dhira Maruti, Gita Maruti Sangita Maruti, Gita Maruti Sangita Maruti, Dhuta Maruti Rama Dhuta Maruti, Dhuta Maruti Rama Dhuta Maruti, Bhakta Maruti Parama Bhakta Maruti, Siddha Maruti Sarva Siddha Maruti. Anjaneya Swami ki Jai. Why name of Anjaneya? A Parama Bhakta, and the devotion to the Parama Bhakta is considered even more valuable than devotion to the Master himself. And when you call out to Maruti, even if you don't call, that's why there are names called Maruti Rama. So when you call out to Rama, it is Hanuman who is going to respond first. So during times, these are difficult times now, in these times, let's recall the glories of Rama. Let's recall the strength of Hanuman. Let's recall the inspiration of Hanuman. Let's stay safe. Let's stay at home. And hopefully, very soon, this Maharoga will leave us all. Jai Shri Ram.